how long have you been here, and give me some general
Sure.
background on you.
I've been here a year and a day.
Okay, and
That's literally, actually.
from where?
I grew up here in Atlanta, Georgia, and most recently I have moved from Philadelphia, which is where I was ordained.
Ordained there. And where did you, so you went to Atlanta schools, and then where did you, university?
I went to Northwestern University in Chicago.
That's my school,
Hey.
journalism,
Yep.
63, 64.
Medill.
That's great. And so you, are you a doctor of divinity, or?
No, I have a master's of Hebrew letters, and I
Okay.
have a rabbi degree. I mean,
Hebrew
like a
letters.
special conference of the title of rabbi.
I see. Now, this congregation, Bet Havarim, is a diverse kind. Tell me about the congregation.
Okay, so the congregation is 16 years old, and originally it was founded from a social group called Chaverim, which in the Hebrew means friends.
That's right, what I know.
And they were having Passover, Seder, dinner one night, some of these people, and they were like, we need a synagogue, and so they created Beit Chaverim. Beit is often a word that goes before temples or
that way. It means house of. So it's the house of friends, and they started having lay-led services 16 years ago. It was predominantly gay and lesbian, almost exclusively so, for many, many years. And about 4 or 5 years ago, there were, maybe even a little bit longer, there were 1 or 2 straight families who were interested in joining.
So why don't we just start here, because that's good stuff. What I think we want to do is a piece.
Introduce you. Or you tell me when we're rolling. We're visiting today with Rabbi Joshua Lesser, who is the rabbi for Congregation Bet Havarim here in Atlanta. Rabbi Lesser, how long have you been here?
I have been here for a year and a day, literally, so I came last August.
But you're an Atlanta native.
Correct. I grew up here, I went to school here, and so for me, this return has been a homecoming. I left to go away for college, but my return has been a really wonderful one. My family, my parents, my sister are still here in Atlanta.
So is this your first congregation?
As a student, I served in a gay and lesbian congregation as an intern in New York City, and then I had my own congregation in Baltimore for 2 years, which was actually just a mainstream congregation. And it was a choice between staying in Baltimore with that congregation or coming here to Atlanta. And for me, I thought a more growthful edge was to be here to work with our congregation, which has a strong gay and lesbian element, but now has moved into a more diverse phase of its origins.
So Bet Havarim is House of Friends, and is now, how old is the congregation?
The congregation is 16 years old. It was preceded by a social group of gay and lesbian Jews called Chaverim. And so Chaverim, people one night over a Passover Seder, having dinner, decided that they wanted to expand and become a synagogue, not just a social organization. And so they started leading lay-led services 16 years ago, originally in people's homes, and then we have had an ongoing relationship with the Quakers, the Friends Meeting House, which is where we currently reside.
And how many in the congregation currently?
Currently, we have about 200 adult members, and we have probably close to 70 children.
And I saw that you have services on Friday nights for children and adults.
Correct. About twice a month, we have children's services, and every Friday night we have services for open to the entire community. And on Saturday mornings, we have services twice a month, and we're looking to grow that as well.
So it began as predominantly a gay and lesbian kind of congregation, and now it's broader, but much more accepting, or how do I say it, more diverse.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is more diverse. I mean, I think that this congregation took a very bold and brave step. A while back, 1 or 2 straight members were interested in joining the congregation, which is not unusual for gay and lesbian synagogues. Often maybe 2 or 3% of their membership will be straight because of convenience or being friends with people. But this group of people decided to start a school because there were several people in the community who were gay and lesbians who were also having children that needed to be educated. And so there was a conscious decision to go forward and start welcoming people in the larger Atlanta Jewish community who had been alienated from Jewish tradition. And who better to show them a way back to Judaism than a group of people who have been historically ostracized from Judaism but wanted to retain that connection. So we have this amazing, and people call it that our congregation has a gay and lesbian soul or spirit that really embraces a renewed vigor for having a meaningful Jewish life in all of its various meanings.
So I've seen the term Reconstructionist. What does that term mean exactly?
So like Christianity, with different branches like Methodist and Episcopalian, Judaism has movements. People often see Judaism just as a monolith, but really there are four major movements. There's the Reform movement, Orthodox movement, the Conservative movement, the Reconstructionist movement. And there's even a smaller renewal movement. So Judaism has diverse approaches as well, and Reconstructionism is a contemporary, fresh approach to Judaism that looks at Judaism as an evolving civilization, that our history is important, but that we feel free to use the breadth of contemporary knowledge, which in other traditions is often not looked at. It's only the past is looked at. So we want to create a meaningful life, given that not only do we live in two civilizations, our Jewish civilization, but American civilization, but also that there's so much more to inform Judaism today. And so Judaism has always historically evolved, and we are helping Judaism along in that evolutionary process.
So this spectrum of Judaism from Orthodox to Reconstructionist, what are the major differences? I assume the Orthodox are not as accepting of gays and lesbians? And
Sure. I mean, specifically, I'll talk about the gay and lesbian issue and how they're different, because I could go on for an hour about how they're different in other ways.
Sure.
Orthodoxy believes in the validity of halakha, Jewish law. And so Jewish law and Torah states that, and they see it as divine, so they believe that it is a prohibition decreed by God that one cannot practice homosexuality. And so there is a lot of oppression towards gays and lesbians, and at the very least, there's this kind of love the sinner, hate the sin attitude.
Yeah.
In the conservative movement, they're in a more difficult position because on one hand they are welcoming gays and lesbians, but it basically is a second class citizenship. Rabbis are not encouraged to do gay and lesbian rituals and commitment ceremonies. They are not allowed. Gay and lesbians are not allowed to become rabbis or serve in those kind of major spiritual leadership roles. In the Reform movement, gays and lesbians can become rabbis, and they do gay and lesbian commitment ceremonies depending on each individual congregation. But still, there is many congregations and rabbis who speak out against homosexuality. And so the Reform movement is just kind of on the edge of really taking this on as an issue. For them, too, they see it much more as they should have civil rights. Gays and lesbians should have civil rights, but they should not always necessarily have religious rights. And that depends congregation to congregations. We have some very supportive Reform congregations here in Atlanta, like the Temple, who have some wonderful rabbis who are responsive to our community. And then lastly, Reconstructionism, which actually has been on the vanguard of this issue for about 14, 15 years. We are the first rabbinical school to acknowledge gays and lesbians' right to become ordained clergy. We also not only explore gay and lesbian commitment ceremonies or unions, but we also explore other life cycles, how to include two mothers in a baby naming ritual, so that we change everything, and we really want to honor and acknowledge gay and lesbians' participations. In the Reform movement, they have several solely gay and lesbian synagogues. In Reconstructionism, the majority of our synagogues welcome gays and lesbian people, so it hasn't been as necessary. Beit Havorim is the only gay and lesbian synagogue that's been founded as a Reconstructionist synagogue. but we were gay and lesbian first and then found Reconstructionism, so it was the other way around. But now we are becoming very much, and actually even more so, I think, the model for Reconstructionist congregations, because we are 65% gay and lesbian, 35% straight, whereas in most Reconstructionist synagogues, maybe they'll have at the most 20% gay and lesbian people.
Right.
So we are a unique congregation like no other in the United States that I know of.
You've just returned from a major conference, the 16th Annual Conference of Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual, and Transgender Jews.
Right.
I just find that wonderful. It's an annual conference and the largest of its kind.
They have regional conferences. This was an international conference that happens every 2 or 3 years, depending on a variety of factors. And actually, it is only after this conference that you can say transgendered is included in the name, because even though transgender people have played a crucial role in this Congress, their name hasn't always been recognized. And that was one of the accomplishments of this Congress, that as a community, or as a communities coming together, we have finally acknowledged the role and the contribution that transgender people have played in the gay, or in, I would say, the queer Jewish community.
You led a workshop on gay ethics, or gay Jewish ethics. What does that mean, and
Sure.
what kind of things were you talking about?
So my workshop was entitled, Is All Sex Holy? Exploring Gay and Lesbian Sexual Ethics. For me, I believe that sex in general is a very difficult conversation. I was very nervous leading this workshop, but I felt that we need to have these conversations, that for gays and lesbians to be able to talk about sex honestly and openly. First of all, I believe we have a lot to offer the rest of the world in terms of our approach to sex. Bill Clinton's excuse of not having sex with Monica Lewinsky, by his definition, would never fly in a gay and lesbian community. We have a vast and, I believe, beautiful definition of the possibilities of sex. And so I think that we could add the nuances of the way that we define sex. But I also think that people espouse one thing in the gay community as what they want, and then they behave differently often. And I'm really interested in having people, not judging what they're interested in, but having people have what they say they're interested in correlate with their behavior. So if people are interested in being in committed partnerships, then I'm interested in helping foster them, being in making choices that reflect that. But if people really aren't honestly there, let's look at alternative relationships. Let's look at it and talk about ethical ways to be in there. There are a lot of people who have done writings on how to be in a non-monogamous relationship with ethics, which I find fascinating. And I'm really just interested in people having integrity with their sexuality. And I think it will strengthen our community to be able to confront some of the judgmentalism internally as well as externally, but also making choices, whether it is choosing monogamy, which often is what people say that they want, or choosing non-monogamy, which I think is an extremely complex and difficult kind of relationship to maintain. But I think that given people abiding by a contract and communication is possible. And I certainly have friends who have those kinds of relationships that have worked for 15, 18, 20 years. So I learned from them that there are multiple ways to be in relationship. And my question was, is all of them holy? And that's what we explored.
That's very nice. We're meeting tomorrow with Mark Jordan, who's a Catholic. Are we okay with time? We're meeting tomorrow with Mark Jordan, professor at Emory, who's written a recent book on, well, he wrote one on the invention of sodomy, and the new one is The Silence of Sodom. Is there sort of a silence in Judaism about gay rabbis and perhaps people who are gay that are not recognized as such?
Certainly. I think that there are people who've had, when I was in rabbinical school, for the first time ever, because of where I went, when we looked at medieval love poetry, we discovered that some revered rabbis had written homoerotic love poetry, which never entered into my education. So that there have been contributions made by gay and lesbian people who are Jews that often is covered up. and there's ways to look at biblical stories, like the story of Jonathan and David, as a love story that isn't taught as even a potential. I don't know for sure whether it was or not, but there's some language that indicates. David says, I love Jonathan more than my love for women. At least open up that possibility. And I think that the Jewish community, in some ways, has been in denial about lots of things. And this is just one of them. When you're a small group, you want to put your best face forward. And so for many people, that face isn't a gay and lesbian face. But for me and my congregation, part of our best face is the diverse face of it. And I think that gay and lesbian Jews add a creative and committed face to Judaism, which is really important. And the whole community can celebrate in that. We want Jewish continuity like the rest of the congregations. For us, though, it isn't always through procreation.
We've been talking to Rabbi Joshua Lesser of Congregation Bet Havrim here in Atlanta. Thank you, Rabbi, and we hope to see you again.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity.
Good piece. Here's who we are. My business cards aren't out of the press yet, but
Okay.
Mike started the company